Hey, how's it going? It's Carlo here from AYCB, and today I'm going to be giving you an overview of Res Arcana Lux et Tenebrae. So this is the first and so far only expansion for Res Arcana. I'll say it right now, Res Arcana was one of my favorite games of 2019, and aside from Race for the Galaxy and maybe Innovation, this is probably my next favorite tableau builder. I think it's a fantastic game that plays really quickly. The base game already was great on its own, and I think Lux et Tenebrae just takes it to another level. It's basically the perfect expansion for this type of game and exactly what I was hoping for. Very few added rules. It's pretty much the same game, but there's a lot of extra content that kind of fleshes everything out and kind of fills in some of the cracks that I felt like there were. So stick around, I'll show you everything that comes with the expansion, talk about the one or two minor rule differences, and then I'll tell you about what makes it such a good expansion. So stick around. Alright, so before I show you what's actually in the new expansion, I want to mention the two minor issues I had with the base game of Res Arcana, just because that helps frame what this expansion kind of addressed, at least for me. So the first was, every once in a while, you would feel like you might have lost the game just because the deck that you got of artifact cards might not have stacked up to your opponent's deck. Obviously, there's a draft that helps kind of, mitigate that a little bit, but there were still some games where at the end my opponent and I would look and we saw that they had let's say 5 or 6 cards that synergized together, and I might have only had 2 or 3. And sometimes with the items available and the places of power, you might not have had the room to kind of maneuver the way you wanted with your particular strategy. The second thing was the dragon cards. I wasn't a huge fan of the dragons. It could be because I mostly played this at 2 players, where they feel like they might not have as big of an effect on the game, especially for how much it takes to get them out in play. Sometimes the cost was too high, or it felt like you couldn't take advantage of the cards in the deck that let you get the dragons out easier or whatnot. So those were 2 minor issues. I wouldn't say they're necessarily criticisms that are like wrong with the design of the game. It was a personal thing, and more again might have to do just with the player count. So what does this expansion do to address that? First thing is, it goes up to 5 players, and in the rulebook you'll actually see they've indicated there's different scaling now for player counts. So in terms of the available number of monuments and places of power, the numbers you were playing with before now only apply to the 3-player count, whereas they tweak them if you're playing with 2 players or with 4 or 5. They want to keep the game feeling the same level of it being kind of tight regardless of what player count, so that's why they kind of tweak that. I think it's a really nice addition and does make the game feel a little more balanced and preserve that same feeling across player counts. So there's basically only 3 minor new kind of rules that you're going to see that come across some of these opponents. The first is going to be that there is, before there was dragons and creatures, now there's also going to be demons added into the game, which sort of play off of that the death element quite a bit. The other thing is there's a new keyword called retrieve, which is really only comes into play a couple times. And then there are also these scrolls, which are these one-time items that you can get from one of the new magic items. So you'll kind of see this as we go over the components. So let's start with the places of power. So there were 10 in the base game. This one adds 4 new ones. So 2 of them double-sided, basically. You've got Temple of the Abyss, which actually plays off of the demons that I mentioned. I'm not going to go over all what's on these in detail, but you can kind of see them here. You've also got the Gate of Hell, which also plays off of demons and that death element once more. You've got the Dragon Eyrie, so we've got more stuff playing off dragons here. And then the Crystal Keep. You'll notice that all these places of power involve either the green or black elements, so life or death in one way or another, which is obviously the kind of focus of this expansion. So adding these in will obviously give you a bunch more, replay value just in terms of which places of power are out every game. Next up, we've got a bunch of artifact cards. So the base game came with 40 of these, and remember, you're basically making an 8-card deck. There's 12 new artifacts, so it takes the deck from 40 up to 52. A good chunk of these new ones, I think about 8 or 9, are actually just demon cards. There's actually one that I believe is a demon and creature in one. And then there's a couple other, there's another dragon card and stuff. So again, I won't go all into the artifacts, but they're mostly there to inject some more of these demons into the game. But there's a couple other cards too to just play off a bit more of that life and death element that was maybe a bit lacking in the original game. So the additional artifacts are a very welcome addition to a game that had a pretty small pool of cards to choose from as it was. Then we've got 4 new mages. There were 10 in the base game. Now there's 4 more mages. One of them right here, the Demonologist. Has a really cool ability. So now I'll go over that retrieve since it has that ability. Retrieve is basically just taking a card from your discard pile back to your hand. Super simple. It's just something that wasn't in the base game and just something that gives you a little more room to play around with and maneuver your strategy. We've also got the Beastmaster, which I really like the addition of this one because I felt like creatures were a little underused in the original game. I tried a couple strategies trying to make the creatures work, and I usually felt like when I tried going for a creature-heavy strategy based on my deck that I was pretty often unsuccessful, and I've got to try out the Beastmaster with the expansion, and I can say that definitely is a really good mage that helps kind of address that and open that strategy up a little more. The Bard, which lets you play off of demons, dragons, and creatures. So basically these kind of are just helping. You're probably seeing the common theme of fleshing everything out a little more, giving you more direction so that, you know, if you go for a creature-heavy deck or a dragon-heavy deck, you're not going to be stuck relying on just the synergies of your cards. There's, you know, whether it's the mage you get or the places of power that are available or whatnot, you should have more options going forward. 4 more monuments. Again, there was 10 in the base game, 4 more being added in. I won't go into these too much, but one of them plays off of demons. The other ones are just kind of based off the elements, or the essences, I should be calling them. And finally, this is probably the most interesting part to me. The magic items sometimes felt like you might end up at the end of the round getting one that might not be super useful to you. There are 2, and these ones I am going to look at in close detail. The first one being Illusion. So it has 2 abilities that you can react as you use this as a power to make this count as a demon or a creature. So basically, you see these cards in the game that are like, you know, let's say one of the places of power, you activate it and it gives you 2 points for every dragon you have or whatnot. What this illusion means is when you activate a card that's asking you how many of something you have, you can then activate this illusion as well to make it count as, let's say, a demon or a creature towards a scoring condition. So remember what I was saying before, you might end up drafting, you know, your 8 cards has 1 or 2 demons or creatures, and you don't really feel like you have a lot to work with. The illusion kind of helps you out in that way. A lot of flexibility, I really like it, and even on the bottom it lets you kind of mirror as a dragon instead. Really cool stuff. And the other one, which is even cooler, is Inscription. So this allows you to activate it and use a resource to claim a scroll. So that's where these new components here come into play. Think of these as one-time benefits. So basically, you have this pool of these 8 scrolls. You pick one. Once you gain it, it sits there, and then for the rest of the game, instead of your regular action on your turn, you can just play a scroll instead, take that action, the scroll then goes back to the available pool, and later when someone else uses the inscription, they can take that scroll back. So some of these, I'll just give you an idea. We've got Disjunction, which allows you to convert a gold essence into a black, a blue, a green, and a red. So useful. I've already had this one come up. First turn of the game, incredibly useful. We've got Shield, which has another way to react or to ignore being attacked. So with the extra kind of presence of dragons and demons in this one, it definitely helps have a bit more protection available. We've got the Augury, which is spend a blue resource to draw a card. This one, spend a black one to retrieve a card. So you've got all kinds of little, these one-time tools that you can hold into your kind of back pocket until you really need them to get, you know, out of a sticky situation or to kind of spark your engine to get going a little quicker. And that's really all there is to the expansion. As you can see, it basically gives you another, let's say, 30 to 40% more content, gives you more room to pursue any of these kind of strategies, adds a 5th player, changes the player scaling. Everything here fits in the base box, so you don't even need to keep this. I mean, to me, it's a no-brainer. If you're a fan of Res Arcana at all, if you think this is a game you're going to keep playing in the future, there's no reason not to get this. In my opinion, it's a must-buy. If you're on the fence about even buying the original game, if you haven't played the base game, honestly, it's such a good game on its own that I wouldn't say it's a must-buy if you're on the fence. Can't hurt to try out the base game. There's tons of value there, but if you like it even a bit, I'll say it right now, ever since I bought this, I don't think I'll ever play the base game again by choice. This is just, I think, unquestionably makes a great game that much better. That is Lux et Tenebrae. Again, you'll notice there's a number 1 here, so hopefully there are other expansions on the way, which we will be keeping an eye out. So if you've tried this, I'm curious to know, what do you think? Am I overdoing it? Is the expansion just kind of okay? Do you like it as well? Are you eager for another expansion? Do you find the base game does enough on its own? Let me know in the comments below. Otherwise, I hope this video helped you. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you around.